Chondro Corner where we rise and grow. Twist and turn, let the passion flow. Chondro Corner, watch the future shine. Every scale a story, one of a kind.
From the shadows we move, striking out bright. In every twist we find the light. Breeding the best, gotta have patience in this game. Chondro Corner where we make our name. Chondro Corner, Chondro Corner, Chondro Corner, Chondro Corner, Chondro Corner, Chondro Corner, Chondro Corner. Chondro Corner where we rise and grow. Twist and turn, let the passion flow. Chondro Corner, watch the future shine. Every scale a story, one of a kind. Every scale tells a tale, every clutch a dream. Working the grind, we reign supreme. In every corner, the potential's real. Chondro Corner, where we seal the deal. Chondro Corner, 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 Chondro Corner. Every scale tells a tale, every clutch a dream. Working the grind, we reign supreme. In every corner, the potential's real. Chondro Corner, where we seal the deal. Chondro Corner, Chondro Corner, Chondro Corner, Chondro Corner, Chondro Corner, where we rise and grow. Twist and turn, let the passion flow. Chondro Corner, watch the future shine. Every scale a story, one of a kind. Chondro Corner, where we rise and grow. Twist and turn, let the passion flow. Chondro Corner, watch the future shine. Every scale a story, one of a kind. Chondro Corner, where we rise and grow. Twist and turn, let the passion flow. Chondro Corner, watch the future shine. Every scale a story, one of a kind. Chondro Corner, 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 Chondro Corner.
Hey, what's up, everyone? First and foremost, thank you for tuning in to Chondro Corner. I just wanted to reach out and thank everybody for showing their support with this first episode of mine. Bear with me. We are in the middle of kind of mass chaos in our state and in my area in general. So with that being said, all super chats from this episode will be donated to Bob's Exotics. As most of you know, they had significant flooding during Helene, and we are about to get hit again with a record-breaking storm. So again, any super chats will go straight to them. Thank you for the support once again, and I'm going to go ahead and bring Bill on now.
Hi,
hey,
Jen.
Bill.
Hi, Jen. Happy Monday. It's good to see you again.
Yes, happy Monday to you too.
Wow. Thanks for having me on the inaugural episode of Chondro Corner. It's an honor, but to be honest, I would have been disappointed if you didn't ask me.
I would have had to ask you. Since you're the one who brought me into this game, it only made sense to message you and ask you to come on first as my first guest. So
I do feel responsible. I do feel responsible, that's for sure.
100%. You are responsible for this.
I take full responsibility. You got some goodness going in the chat already. I see that. I recognize a lot of familiar names there, so it's good to see everybody, and it's good to have support tonight. I know I listened to your intro. We talked a few minutes before the show about the hurricane one that's already been and one that's coming. So I know you wanted to just at least take a second, and you already said the super chats are going to help your friends in the facility. But I know you've got a lot to look forward to here in the next couple of days. So thanks for writing this out, and thanks for doing it. And just my prayers will be with you and the people in Florida.
Thank you. And I absolutely, for anybody who's viewing, if you could say a prayer for all of us who stayed, because if it doesn't weaken, we're in for one heck of a ride for sure. So it'll be an interesting few days.
Hang in there, and you've got the community support, just like you've had the communities giving support. So hang in there. Absolutely.
So let's switch things off of that rough topic.
Yes.
So thank you for coming on. I know you do a lot of these, so you're probably going to repeat some answers, but what got you into chondro specifically?
Well, I think like for a lot of people, I had always admired green tree pythons and wanted to keep them, but I was afraid of some of the stigma that they carry. Some of them at the time particularly when I was getting in, had good reason and good reputation to avoid green trees. You know, a lot of the animals that I was exposed to early were expo green trees. And, you know, typically for me, that meant the ones that you walked by and they were bitey, they were defensive, you know, probably a subadult biak, you know, would be your typical thing that I would see at an expo. Or I even had a friend that had one, and every time I went over there and you walk by the cage, they would just strike violently, you know, at every shadow. So I just, you know, I didn't feel like I was prepared to keep green trees. And if they were still like that, and I still believe they were like that, I wouldn't keep them today. But I had some people that I trusted, notably in the carpet python community, that, you know, convinced me to, you know, walk off the plank, so to speak, and to get my first one. And I did it. And then I never looked back, kind of like you. I just, I fell in love with them. I found out that a lot of these misconceptions and myths, you know, were untrue about them, that they were difficult species to keep, that they were super defensive, that you couldn't handle them. You know, all these things turned out to be untrue. And, you know, it just took me really a long time to figure that out. And then once I did, I was just hooked.
I think that seems to be the common factor amongst people who are questioning whether to get into green trees. Is the misconception is they are all spicy.
Yeah.
So like even when I got yours and I was able to pull it right out of the deli cup fresh from shipping, and it just handle it right away with no issues. It was really, that was what the straw was that broke the camel's back for me. When did you decide to go from keeping chondros to breeding them?
It wasn't very much long after I got my first one. I think, you know, just like you, it's so funny. It's so funny. You are following my path, but you're just about 10 years behind me.
Well, I got some catching up to do, right?
You got some catching up to do, but there's always time for that. So I got my first green tree, and then within 3 years, I had produced my first clutch. So it was a pretty quick progression. Once I knew, and I'd kept them for a little while, I knew I wanted to try to breed them. You know, it's just something inherent into a lot of us, that a lot of the fun associated with what we do is the chance, the opportunity to reproduce them, right? For all the things that go along with it, the challenge and the mystery, and just another layer on top of keeping them. So once I was able to feel like I could keep them successfully, I was no longer afraid of them. Then, you know, I knew I wanted to breed them pretty quick. So I think I produced my first clutch in 2014. Yeah, you got some great people in the chat with some super chats already. Chuck.
Yes. Thank you.
You know who Chuck is, right?
I do. I've actually been stalking some of his Instagram posts.
Well, Chuck is, I was thinking about it before we went on. I think you are the fourth active podcaster with active chondro content, which is great.
No pressure.
Chuck happens last but not least, is what they say.
Yeah. Well,
Chuck is one of them. Chuck has a podcast that he does with Lucas called the Chondro Lounge.
Yes.
And while we're mentioning podcasts, I have to throw out, of course, a podcast that I'm involved with on Tuesday nights with Marshall Mendez and MJ, and that's All on the Tree Tuesdays. So, you know, I would encourage everybody, you know, people that are not green tree connoisseurs that are listening or may listen to this episode in the future to try to connect with all four of those podcasts. They're all different. They all have their, you know, their different twists and their take and their style. So I would listen to all of them. I listen to all of them. I enjoy all of them because they are different. Yeah,
I think you learn a little bit from everybody. Honestly, we all kind of ask different questions, have different things that come to mind.
Yeah, the style's different. Each one of the styles is different.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. 110%. What was one thing getting into it that you wish you had known that you know now?
That's a good question. I think probably taking in realization where you live geographically can make a big difference. Not necessarily in how you keep these things, but how if the opportunity comes to try to breed them. I think where you
Mhm.
live, your weather patterns in particular, can make a significant difference in your strategy. And it took me a little while to figure that out because my primary mentors were on the East Coast, like in Maryland. Those were the people that kind of got me into it. And my very, very good friend and mentor, Buddy Buscemi, who is going to be on, I hope I'm not spilling the beans here prematurely.
No, you're good.
Be your,
My
I believe
second interview.
second interviewer and he's a great guy. And I think I told you before, save all the hard questions for Buddy and, go easy on me tonight. Because
Here I am asking hard questions.
I expected it. But he lives in Maryland and his weather patterns are different, and so I had to alter my breeding strategies based on where I live. So that was one of the things that I learned. Really, I came into it like yourself, really quite prepared. I expected the worst and was happy that it was nowhere near as bad as I thought it was going to be. These things they're really so easy to keep. I don't need to be telling you this. They're just super, super
Yeah,
easy.
once it's dialed in, it was easy. It was just figuring out, for me, it was the temperatures, because I do ambient in my reptile room. So for me, it was just dialing in where I needed to set the temps in the enclosures to offset kind of where my ambient swings are. So, I mean, for the most part, really in here, I don't even have to run heat on theirs because of how dialed in my ambient is.
Yeah,
but,
that's perfect. I know a lot of people, including my protege Alex Warren runs strictly ambient, and he keeps them well, and he produces an ambient, and so that's awesome.
So, what is your greatest success since you've been breeding chondros? What would you say is your platinum winner of your successes?
I think it's hard to argue with your first clutch. Like getting your first clutch underneath your belt is, it's really, really special, to get that first clutch. There's so many kind of links in the chain that it's not a lot different than ball pythons. It just seems like there's more links in the chain than breeding ball pythons. And anytime any of those links gets broken, then the whole project is just gone. So I think the fact of just, having my first reproduction was really special. And then, of course, the second clutch I ever produced an animal called the Sickness.
Yes.
Which,
it's
was really
spectacular.
Kind of just through really nothing but a lot of luck and, a lot of dreams and swinging for the fence. I produced an animal like that, especially my second clutch. And the fact that it survived, because I lost a lot of animals from that clutch that, to be honest, I probably would not have lost today. But, when you're trying to establish these things, you can talk to as many people as you want and watch all the videos and all that, but until you're actually actively doing it, they can be a challenge to establish. But luckily this one survived. This is a baby. Even, as hard as I tried to kill it, it survived. So I was super lucky there, and really that's kind of what just got the ball rolling big time to produce that animal. And then lastly, I think, the first time that I produced an animal that produced animals was, again, another really wow, that's pretty cool.
I mean, that's when you can really say you're a breeder, right? When one of your babies produces a baby.
Produces babies. Yeah. I don't know. It seemed like it was just, again, another step of wow, this has been a journey.
Yeah. As far as husbandry, do you keep constant temps or do you do a night swing with yours?
Yeah, so I do not keep ambient. I keep all of mine with, obviously I have an ambient room temperature, but during the day they have heat to a hot spot. I would say my room is like 75 degrees. and that's day and night. And then I'll provide a warm spot of about 84 degrees for adults and subadults. And then that warm spot, that warm area goes off at night. So all my radiant heat panels, all my heat tape, they go off at night. And then, so everything's just 75 degrees at night. So I do offer about a 10-degree night drop during the non-breeding season. So yeah.
And then during breeding season, what do you offer for a night drop then?
So during breeding season, everything stays the same with the exception of my night temperatures. So my daytime temperatures stay the same, 75 degrees ambient, hot spot at 84, 82 to 84. And then at night, I'll let my lows go down to about 70. So about a 5-degree night drop between breeding season and non-breeding.
And do you change your feeding schedule at all with your females during breeding season or leading into breeding season?
Yeah, so that's what we call food cycling, and I started doing that about 4 years ago. I started food cycling, and the idea of food cycling is where these things are from. There's really not warm and cold. There's not summer and winter, but there's wet seasons and dry seasons. So the premise is to try to mimic some kind of changing in the availability of food. So obviously, that's what we're trying to mimic. And so what I'll typically do is do a forced fast for really about 3 months right before the breeding season. And then I'll start to introduce males. And the idea is to have food available for when when these babies would be hatching. So that might be the wet season, right? So maybe for me, it's typically the spring is where I would again start to, introduce food, maybe a little bit before that, but introduce food to the female. The female knows that there's a readily available food source. So it's okay to, procreate, reproduce, ovulate, get these eggs out of you because your babies will have food availability.
How are your egg tubs set up, and what temps do you incubate at?
Yeah, so my
I'm asking for myself right now. I'm going to go back and take notes.
Of course, that's why you're doing this whole podcast, right?
That's it. That's exactly why I'm doing this, actually.
So Jen can learn how to breed chondros.
That's it.
That's good. That's the reason that I started my podcast too a long, long time ago. But to answer your question, I incubate my green trees exactly the same way as my ball pythons, in the same incubator, same egg boxes, same everything. I use no substrate method, so just egg crate suspended above water, 87.5 degrees, and with a very mild drop in that temperature, maybe the last week of incubation to like maybe 87.
Okay.
But really they're sitting right next to my ball python eggs.
That's not a bad idea. That is not a bad idea. Hatchling setups. So we know you do chicken gizzards. So what else do you feed your neos?
Well, I get them established. I mean, I offer their first meal is a mouse pink scented with chip down. And once they take that, then I will start really the last year I started incorporating these chicken gizzards to supplement mice pinks and ASF pinks. And so I'll just do kind of a rotation of those three. And the chicken gizzard just came because I wanted to find a more nutritional source than mice pinks. Ball pythons, they're usually first established on hopper mice, fuzzy mice or hopper mice, and you don't really have to worry about the nutritional aspect of what a fresh hatched ball python is getting. But you really have to question it when you look at a mouse pink, or even worse, a mouse red, a day-old mouse pink. It's really nothing but a bag of just blood and water, and there's really no nutritional value in it at all. And most people believe that has led to some problems or potential problems in green tree babies, neonates, until they can get on something with some more substance like a fuzzy mouse. So, I've just started incorporating different food items if I can get them to eat it. And my experience, they've taken chicken gizzard very readily. So it worked out good for me last year. Other people are experimenting with other stuff like captive bred geckos,
Yes.
button quail, which not exactly sure what a button quail is. I've never seen one in person, but
They're
evidently
tiny.
they're tiny, tiny, very small. And so, just people trying to get
Have you ever
away.
thought about experimenting with any of those?
Not yet, because the chicken gizzards I've gotten such good response with. I think I would definitely try a captive bred gecko if I was having an animal that wouldn't take a mouse pink or a chicken gizzard. The gecko more replicates what they're used to eating in nature. They're not eating mice pinks in the wild. They're eating skinks, lizards, tiny amphibians, and maybe even bugs. So I would definitely try that. So I think you just have to have some flexibility and some creativity in what works best for you.
When looking at your neos, how do you decide which ones possibly stay and which ones get offered up to that person that slides in your DM just asking for information like me?
That's a good question. Holdbacks, it depends who you talk to, and it depends on your level of how long you've been producing and stuff like that. I hold very few animals back now because I've got so much of the genetics in my collection already, and I've got enough animals to keep me busy and being able to produce the number of clutches I want to produce every year. So I don't hold back a lot of stuff. But what makes me decide to hold it back is if I do have relatively new genetics in my room, then I'm more likely to hold those animals back than stuff like I've got a male called Jaeger that is probably sired no less than
my
12. Yeah, he's sired. Absolutely. He sired your yellow Neo. He's probably sired 12 clutches. So I don't hold a single animal from him back from him, regardless of what the Neo looks like. I haven't held a baby back from him in many years. But some of the newer stuff that I'm more likely to hold, I think I held back 2 Neos last year, and maybe probably the year before that I had a pretty large production year 2 years ago, and I think I held back about 10 animals. But I was really male heavy. It's just getting to the point where I could sex those. So we just sexed them here within the last month, and I was male heavy. So of those 10, I think I sold 5 or 6 of those. So I'm pretty selective in my holdbacks and what I'm keeping back every year. But other people, if it's their first clutch, don't expect them to release
keep all mine.
any.
Yeah.
Don't expect them to release any, or maybe just a couple.
Yeah, I'll just keep all mine.
Yeah.
Did you always hold Neos back for an extended period of time before you let them go to make sure they were established, or did you at one point let them go sooner? Because for me, it felt like a pregnancy while I was waiting for my Neo.
Yeah. I couple of consistencies with me. I release a lot of Neos, but I always release them late. And I release them late, not because I'm looking for them to change or anything like that, but because to me, a green tree baby isn't well established unless it's had 15 meals.
Yeah.
So you're looking under the best case scenario. Let's say it hatches and it sheds, and then 15 meals. If you feed it once a week, you're looking at 17, 18 weeks. That's under very best case scenario, which is most likely not the case. So, I'm usually releasing Neos when they're 4, 5, 6 months of age. And that's not only because I want them just to be monster feeders, sight feeders, but you're also a lot less likely to release a Neo that would prolapse. If you're holding on to it, that 4 or 5 month period. By then you're on small fuzzies usually, and the likelihood of them prolapsing is a lot less. In fact, I don't think I've ever released a baby that has gone on to prolapse for its new owner.
Mm-hmm.
But I've had plenty of prolapses, but it usually happens
How
before.
do you deal with the ones with prolapses? Do you find that they can bounce back from that, or do you find that tends to be like the straw for the camel's back, so to speak?
They can definitely bounce back, especially if it's a small one, and if it happens once. The vast majority of those things are going to bounce back and be fine. You get your second prolapse, and then your odds go, way down. At least in my experience, that if they have that second prolapse, then you're really behind the 8 ball. But if they just have one prolapse, it's relatively small. The vast majority of those babies will recover.
How do you determine who you're going to pair up?
How long is this episode?
We still got some time. That's why I asked that question.
It depends on a lot of things. It really depends on a lot of things. To me, almost any pairing is a good pairing. I try not to pair up animals that are too closely related.
Mm-hmm.
I have a lot of animals in my facility that I produce. I produce their parent. I produce the animal that's breeding. So I try not to do too close or too much of line breeding. So that's really the number one thing that, I try to, just at least in my collection, because it's relatively closed now. I probably get maybe two new babies a year. Some years I don't get any fresh blood. So my collection is relatively closed. And so I'm basically just looking at, who's ready to breed, first of all, because I have some females that I will breed back to back for sure. If they make a good recovery, put their weight on. They don't all do that. So I have some females that I have to rest. I have to just try to decide how many clutches do I want to produce. Last year, they're just so unpredictable. Last year, I paired 10 females and only got 3 clutches. The year before that, I paired 6 females and got 6 clutches. So it's unpredictable, but I don't want to have 12 clutches of green trees. So
it's a lot of babies.
It's a lot of babies. Yeah, it's a lot of babies. So
when you do your pairings, how long do you keep the male in? Do you just keep them in for one lock and then pull them, or do you keep them in, like some people seem to keep them in for a month or 2 until they see progression on the female? What do you do?
Most of the males, unless it's their very first year, like a 3-year-old male, then I'll have a specific female for him. It's just kind of a one-on-one. But most of my more established males usually get 2 females. I've had a male breed 4 females at a time. So, but most of the time it's a 1 male, 2 females, and I will usually introduce that male. And if they're locking continuously, I'll keep them in there really for quite a while. A month. They're locking every night. I'll keep them in there 3 weeks, for a month until they separate. And then, the best case scenario for me is to kind of get 1 female done and then move the male to the next female.
Yeah.
But that doesn't always happen. I may have a female where I'll have a male in for a couple of weeks, and then I'll separate, and it's not like ball pythons, rest them for a week, right? And then get them onto another female. And then a lot of it just depends, how's it going? Is he blocking up with the second female? Is the first female ovulated yet? So there's just a lot of played up by ear. See how it goes.
What's 1 or 2 pieces of advice you would give to somebody like myself, for instance, who is just dipping their big toe into this rabbit hole?
Well, I think, don't get ahead of yourself. First of all, get an animal, get a green tree python, and make sure you think, it's the right animal for you. And I think you're going to really increase your odds of doing what you did. In other words, getting the right animal from the right person and putting it in the right box. If you do those 3 things, you're going to have a very high likelihood of being successful. And if you're successful, then you'll be pleased, and then you'll want to continue the journey. If your first experience is not that way, if it's the opposite of that, then you're more likely to just throw it away and say those aren't for me, when maybe it really is for you. You just didn't know it. So
Start with the right animal.
start with the right animal. Start slowly. Do your research. Get it from a reliable, reputable source. Follow their guidance. Use them as a guide, and then go crazy like you've gone.
Yeah. Yeah, that's your fault though. Just so everybody knows, it's his fault, 110%.
I take full responsibility.
It's 110% your fault.
I take full responsibility, and it's been an honor. You've done everything right. You did everything that I asked you to do with that animal from the day that you got it, and I can just tell you're excited to have it. The way that you talk about it, and
oh my God, I love it.
Yeah, they'll change the way you think about snakes, right?
It'll change it more when he finally gives up the yellow.
I'm telling you, it's going to be the first yellow baby in the history of chondros that doesn't change. It's just going to stay yellow.
And it's going to surprise me in 3 years or something. It's going to do something off the wall. When you do decide to add new blood, even though it's not every year, what factors into that decision?
Well, first and foremost, it has to be from the right person. The chondro community is relatively small. It doesn't mean that just because I don't know somebody or you don't know somebody that they're not legitimate and good and reputable and all that. But it's a pretty small community, so it would need to come from the right person. And then, of course, my projects really focus heavily on melanistic animals, black animals. So for me, it has to be a red baby, because that's, up until this point, the vast majority of melanistic green trees derive from red babies. So it has to be a red baby. It has to be from the right person. And then it has to have the right lineage. And for me, that's either high blue or high black or high calico lineage, any of those three.
I'm just seeing okay, next time you let the baby go, I'm going to be we slide on in the DMs again,
I was lucky. I was very, very fortunate to pick up a couple of babies this year. One of them from Mark Hager, who's my very good friend here, local in Texas. And then another Texas keeper, Steven Saltzman, acquired a baby from him as well.
That's awesome.
And then last, and how could I forget this? Buddy Buscemi sent me a little red Neo last week, a calico line, beautiful red Neo. So that's 3 this year.
That's 3 this year. You're breaking your record here.
Yeah, I'm breaking my own rules.
Breaking your own rules. With all the positives, what is your biggest learning opportunity you had faced during all of your years of doing chondros?
Probably the biggest thing that changed during my journey in green trees has been nidovirus and the ability to test it and detect it and then work around it. That really changed the face of keeping green tree pythons in the last decade. I think it's been about a decade since we've been able to test for nidovirus in green trees. So really learning about that, making decisions based on that, has been probably the biggest change that I've seen implemented in me personally. And then that has just kind of become the gold standard now of dealing with green trees.
How many times do you test a green tree typically? Like if you were to bring a new one into your collection not from a collection that is already tested, for instance.
Yeah.
How many times would you recommend somebody test a green tree, and over what kind of period of time?
Yeah, it's a great question. And, I've talked to really a lot of authorities about this. And when I say authorities, I'm talking about people like Chad Lytle at REL, who happens luckily to be local to me as well. He's 30 minutes from me, runs a huge lab where he does not only reptiles, but he does avian stuff, he does human stuff, he does COVID stuff. And so I've talked to him a lot about it and a lot of other experienced green trees. But to answer your question, I think that if you test an animal 3 times in a 6-month period, then you've got about a 99% reliability that animal is going to be negative. I think if you tested him two times in a 3-month period, you probably got a 90% likelihood that it's negative. So in my own personal experience, it depends, who the animal's coming from, what their practices are, the age of the animal as well. So I don't routinely test neos. Anything under 6 months old, I don't routinely test. But I want to know the source that it's coming from. I want to know how they keep their collection. Most people that are doing this now and are selling babies, I think one of the standards is you keep your babies away from your regular collection. So because, as we know, babies, even if the parents are positive, if you incubate them artificially in an incubator, not maternal incubation, because that's different. But if you incubate them in an incubator, the babies are going to come out negative. And unless you expose them to a nido-positive animal, there's no reason for that animal to be, nido-tested.
Yeah.
So if you keeping your babies separate from your main collection, I don't feel that it's necessary to test them. There is some risk in testing babies, and talking to Chad at RAL, the likelihood of a baby, even if it was positive, showing a positive result is low, because the viral load, is so small in those animals, it could easily be missed. So adults are different than babies, but if you're bringing in a subadult, anything that's over 18 months old, even anything over 12 months old should probably be tested. And what I like to do is, if it's going to leave my facility, I test it the week it goes out, and then I ask the person to get it, that receives it, to test it within the week they receive it. And then maybe test it in the next 2 to 3 months.
Fair enough. That seems to be the general consensus when talking to several people, was the same: test it 3 times over 6 months, and then you should be okay.
Yeah, and obviously, if the animal becomes symptomatic at any time with a respiratory infection, you of course test it then.
Yeah,
that's going to increase your likelihood of having a positive result. And what we've learned is not all respiratory infections are nido virus, right?
They're not all created the same.
Yeah, you can still have bacterial, infections in green trees, but it's probably the vast majority are nidovirus or serpentovirus.
So the running thing is, Bill, you seem to be one that brings a lot of us in. How does that make you feel, knowing you sell a lot of us our very first chondros?
Kind of like a crack addict. Like a crack addict.
You're the dealer, and we're the crack addict, right?
Yeah, I would be the dealer. It makes me feel really good. You're starting this podcast, and I told you that I thought I was about 10 years ahead of you. Well, 10 years ago, I just got on my computer and looked today. Buddy Buscemi and I started a podcast, the original Green Tree podcast, called GTP Keeper Radio. And the audio's terrible, the hosts are terrible, but the content is good. So, I started that because Buddy asked me, because I had one or just got my second green tree at the time. And he goes, I want you to be, and he had been keeping green trees for a decade. He goes, I want you to come on because you'll ask the questions to people, our guests, that I won't think to ask, because I was so new in my keeping. And so now, to forward 10 years later, and to think now, you're doing this, and Lucas started his podcast for really the same reason. He has one green tree. I think he has 2 now, but at the time, 1. And they just want to learn, about green trees, and this is a great way to do it. And so, when we started that, our whole mission was to try to debunk some of the myths about keeping green trees. And, without trying to pat ourselves on the back, I think we've done a good job of that. I think
absolutely.
I think we've spread the word for a decade now. Before social media, we were on before there was Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok and all that. So the social media has just helped it catch fire.
Oh, for sure. I mean, for me, that was one of the things when I first got into the reptile hobby. One of my very first, actually, it was the very first podcast I ever got on. It was a 15 minutes of lame, just the opening, the 15 minutes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And I said, one of the next species I will keep is a green tree. And then here we are, you know, thanks to you.
How long ago was that podcast?
I want to say it was 2021, 22. So it didn't take long.
You were patient. Like before you got mine, you were patient for, I mean, obviously I hold them for a long time before I release them, but you.
No, I was not patient. I was just pretending.
You seemed patient.
I was just pretending. I wasn't going to be the guy that like blew up your messages every other day. So I was just pretending.
Well, you seemed to be awful patient, and obviously you had done your research, and yeah, it was awesome to see you get one of those animals.
Yeah, and it was awesome for me. The whole process and the experience has been amazing. So the next question, designer or locality? And if locality is a preference, what is a locality that you prefer to have in your bloodlines?
Well, anybody that knows my collection knows is designer for sure. Got some great people in the chats tonight. It's really good. You've had a lot of people donating to the super chat, the cause. So that's great to see. So it's designer for me. There's no right or wrong answer. I love locality stuff. A lot of my very best chondro friends are locality people. But for me, it's always been about the like Dr. Frankenstein appeal, whether it's ball pythons or carpet pythons or green trees. I always want to be able to not know what's going to come out of the pairing. And when you do locality stuff, for the most part, you kind of know, you can refine those specific looks. You can really try to hone in for more blues or high white or, more yellow, but you really know what you're going to get. When I produced the sickness, I had no idea that thing was going to come out. And
you have no regrets on that pairing, of course, because it's spectacular. So
yeah, it was just it was 1 in 1,000, 1 in 10,000 or whatever, but it's what like designer dreams are made of. You take an animal that's mildly melanistic, I bred it to a locality animal, a green snake, and out pops this crazy black animal who has proven that he can throw those genetics, that melanistic stuff to his offspring. So that's what got me hooked even more.
So what is one locality then that you wouldn't mind adding into some designer like outcrosses, for instance? What is one locality you would recommend?
It's a great question. I actually have 2 locality animals in my collection. I have a Manicory female that was a red neonate, and she's produced a clutch from me. She was bred to a male offspring of the sickness, and they produced some crazy babies. They produced red and yellow babies, a mixed clutch, and they produced some they look like, most of them look like Manicories, but on steroids. Like the blue's even darker blue, almost a black blue. The yellow ones were just super, super sharp, but blue and green. So that was awesome. And then I've got a Kofiau male locality type, his babies, I've had 1 clutch from him, and his babies are still unchanged. So it's unknown kind of what those are going to look like. But I think really there's so many localities that you could work into a designer project. Biak is the classic, Biak animals mixed with designers or produce some really crazy stuff.
I mean, I'm low-key kind of hoping the designer I got from you is a male, so eventually I can put him back to the Biak female, but we'll see how it goes.
Absolutely.
We'll see how that goes. What is any other advice that you could possibly give to somebody who is considering getting into green trees and may have apprehensions, maybe around the stigma or of keeping, or the stigma of their some of them are a little spicy versus others. What is some advice you would give for that?
Yeah, some people don't mind, the defensive animal or the spicy animal. In my experience, Jen, I can't even tell you how many green trees I have out there. Probably close to 50 animals, subadults and adults, and there's not a single one that I can't go out and get out and handle. Not one. So I tell people the degree of spiciness in a captive bred animal. That this is different than a wild caught imported animal, but in a captive bred, it's about the same as a ball python. You come across probably 5% of ball pythons that are they're spicy, right?
Yeah.
I mean, 5%. So that's what I tell people. So if that's a concern, I would lay that to rest. In the vast majority of cases, you're not going to have to worry about that. But then, of course, especially if it's your first one, get a captive bred one from a reputable source. They'll make your transition in your life.
Bill.
So much. You don't have to call me. There's a lot of good sources.
Don't kick any tires.
You're brutal. You're trying to pour gas on the fire. There's a lot of good sources for captive bred green trees in the U.S. And so just find a good source. Get involved in these podcasts. Get on. There's multiple Facebook groups that center around green tree pythons. So get in there, lurk on there. Try to find a mentor in your area if at all possible. Just the common sense stuff that you did.
Well, you're not in my area, but
we're in the South.
It works. From the South. That's it. It works. Final question as far as enclosures. So for neos, what do you recommend? And then what do you recommend for a yearling, an adult male, and then an adult female?
The great thing about green trees, especially neos and subadults, I keep them in the same rack as my ball pythons. I just put a coat hanger in there. That's the only difference. They sit side by side. I might put them in the lower levels of the rack and the baby ball pythons in the upper. But the only difference is that I put a plastic coat hanger in for the baby green trees. So there's nothing easier than that. Put it in a shoebox size tub with a plastic coat hanger, or there's some commercial little fit-in racks. But definitely for a baby, for a neo, a tub is the way to go. Once it's like 6 to 8 months old, you can start considering small cages. My friends over at Focus Cube Habitats make a 12 by 12 by 12, inch cage with a tiny little heat panel in it and tiny little perches. And so you can keep a well-established animal in that. And then as far as subadults and even adults, again, racks or cages, I keep them in both. I've bred small adult females, in tubs. I wouldn't recommend it, but I've done it when space and other circumstances required it. But I prefer to keep like adult males in like a 2 by 2 by 2 cube. Adult females, larger females, and breeding females, 3 foot by 2 foot by 2 foot cage. So the horizontal space is more important than the vertical space.
Fair enough. All right. Well, I just want to thank everybody for the super chats. The outpouring of support is amazing. Jeremy was in the chats as well. So Jeremy, thank you for popping in. It's been a little rough around here. We're in for one heck of a ride in the next couple of days. So I appreciate, again, all the super chats that went for Bod's Exotics and for helping put towards just rebuilding after we get through this next storm. Bill, it's been a pleasure having you on. I am honored that you took the plunge with me on this first podcast.
Yeah.
Thank you for being my sponsor, my mentor, my friend, everything, all of the above. So I appreciate that.
The pleasure is all mine. And I am so glad I could have been on tonight for your first episode. And I look forward to seeing the guests that you bring on in the future and just keeping up with the podcast.
Thank you so much, Bill.
Thanks everybody for tuning in as well.
Thank you.
Chondro Corner, where we rise and grow. Twist and turn, let the passion flow. Chondro Corner, watch the future shine. Every scale a story, one of a kind.
From the shadows we move, striking out bright. In every twist we find the light. Breeding the best, gotta have patience in this game. Chondro Corner, where we make our name. Chondro Corner, Chondro Corner, Chondro Corner, Chondro Corner, Chondro Corner, Chondro Corner, Chondro Corner. Chondro Corner, where we rise and grow. Twist and turn, let the passion flow. Chondro Corner, watch the future shine. Every scale a story, one of a kind. Every scale tells a tale, every clutch a dream. Working the grind, we reign supreme. In every corner, the potential's real. Chondro Corner, where we seal the deal. Chondro Corner, 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 Chondro Corner. Every scale tells a tale, every clutch a dream. Working the grind, we reign supreme. In every corner, the potential's real. Chondro Corner, where we seal the deal. Chondro Corner, Chondro Corner, Chondro Corner, Chondro Corner, Chondro Corner, where we rise and grow. Twist and turn, let the passion flow. Chondro Corner, watch the future shine. Every scale a story, one of a kind. Chondro Corner, where we rise and grow. Twist and turn, let the passion flow. Chondro Corner, watch the future shine. Every